The tires screeched as the silver SUV skidded on the rain-slicked mountain road. One deer, one swerve. Then, air. The cliff's edge tore beneath her wheels. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. In that final moment before blacking out, Isabelle saw a stranger leap from the trees, timber beam in hand. He wedged it beneath her car, just in time. She lived, but something was lost. Her mother's daisy pendant, the only thing she had left. And now, it was gone. As helicopter blades roared to life, she dropped to her knees in panic. "I had it when I came." He didn't chase her, didn't beg. Caleb just whispered, "If it's here, I'll find it, and I'll send it home." She flew away, but the moment she opened that wooden box days later, everything changed. The sun bled amber and rust across the Appalachian skyline, casting long shadows over the narrow mountain pass. Isabelle Langford gripped the wheel of her charcoal gray Range Rover, her manicured fingers tight with stress. The Bluetooth earpiece in her right ear buzzed with the clipped voices of European investors demanding clarity. Paris clients were furious. Supply chain issues, a factory holdup in Milan, and the New York team had just emailed again, 4 times. Her sunglasses reflected the winding road as she weaved through hairpin turns, like she was born to command both boardrooms and blacktop. High fashion didn't wait for weather or mountain silence, and Isabelle wasn't about to lose control of her empire. Not when she'd built it from the ground up after her mother's death. But nature didn't care about empires. The forest ahead stirred. A flash of movement. A deer, wild-eyed and desperate, leapt into her lane. Instinct overtook logic. She jerked the wheel. Rubber screamed against the slick pavement as the SUV fishtailed, hydroplaned. Tires skidded. One tire caught nothing but air. The right side of the vehicle dipped. And then, silence. The Range Rover's weight tilted forward. Gravity took over. It slipped over the cliff's edge like a stone falling into water. Isabelle's scream was swallowed by the mountain wind. Metal groaned. Glass cracked like ice beneath her. Her body flung forward into the seatbelt's grasp, the smell of smoke and pine filling her lungs. And in those suspended seconds, time seemed to slow. Her mother's daisy pendant bounced against her collarbone, a fleeting tether to memory and meaning. Then through the windshield, a figure. A man sprinting from the tree line, swinging a thick timber beam like a javelin. He shoved it beneath the vehicle's front end just before it dropped completely, wedging it against a rock outcrop. The SUV jolted, stopped mid-fall. Her eyes fluttered. Her breath hitched. The world turned sideways. The door yanked open, and just before everything faded to black, she saw a face, sunburned, steady, and filled with a quiet strength. That face would haunt her in the days to come. The face belonged to Caleb Whitaker, a man with calloused hands and mountain soil under his nails. And the story was only beginning. The smell of cedar smoke drifted through Isabelle's senses before her eyes even opened. Her body ached, every limb heavy, and her mouth was dry. The hum of technology was gone. No monitor beeps, no traffic, no sterile scent of antiseptic. When she opened her eyes, it wasn't a hospital ceiling she saw, but raw wooden beams. She jolted upright, only to wince. Pain bloomed across her shoulder and ribs. She looked around. Stone fireplace, flannel blanket, hand-carved furniture, and pine needles scattered at the door. This wasn't the ER. This was a cabin? Her fingers fumbled for her phone. No bars. She stood on shaky legs, staggered toward the door, and pushed it open, only to find nothing but a blanket of fog rolling through towering pines. "Whoa there," a calm voice said behind her. She spun around. It was him, the man from the cliff, the one who'd wedged the beam beneath her SUV. He stood in the corner of the cabin, rugged and quiet, with dirt still under his nails and firelight dancing across his stubbled jaw. "Where's my assistant?" she demanded, voice brittle. "My team must be looking for me. I need to call someone, anyone." He didn't flinch. "No service up here. Closest tower's 18 miles out." Isabelle blinked. "Then drive me to it." "You've got a mild concussion. Cracked rib too. You passed out cold. You're not going anywhere today." "I wasn't asking." He raised an eyebrow. "Wasn't answering." She glared, but behind her anger was the first flicker of fear. Not of him, of stillness, of being unplugged. Her world was gone. She couldn't hear her calendar, couldn't see her inbox, couldn't do anything. I called the town doc, he added, voice softer now. She's on her way up. Snow slowed her. You're safe. Safe? That word meant nothing when your empire was ticking like a time bomb 3,000 feet below. But as the fire crackled and the silence stretched longer than any meeting she'd ever sat through, Isabelle felt something else. Vulnerability, the kind she couldn't outsmart or outschedule. The knock on the cabin door came mid-morning, soft but firm. Caleb opened it to reveal a wiry older man bundled in a thick raincoat, his face ruddy from the mountain wind. The doctor moved with quiet efficiency, setting down a weathered leather bag and tipping his cap toward Isabelle. She sat rigidly on the couch, arms crossed, still wearing disbelief like a second skin. Let's have a look at you, he said gently, examining her forehead, her pupils, checking for fractures. After a few minutes, he packed his instruments away. No concussion, just a nasty bump. Shoulders bruised. You're lucky. Isabelle exhaled. Good. Then let's go. I'll pay you double to get me to a phone. But the doctor didn't smile. There's a problem, he said, glancing toward Caleb. The road's gone. Landslide about 2 miles down. Whole slope gave way. She blinked. What do you mean, gone? I mean, you're not going anywhere until the plows clear it. Could be tomorrow. Could be 2 days. The room spun. No, I have calls. I have deadlines. I have... Her voice cracked, the panic rising like floodwater. Do you have any idea who I am? She expected the usual response. Apologies, scrambling, deference. But Caleb just stood there, arms folded, eyes calm. You're someone who almost died yesterday, he said quietly. That's enough for me. The silence that followed was deafening. The doctor gave her a gentle nod and disappeared back into the mist. The door clicked shut. Rain tapped the windows like a ticking clock. Isabelle stood frozen, then sank slowly into the armchair, shoulders trembling, not from cold, but from something unfamiliar. Powerlessness. Time, once her most valuable currency, now meant nothing up here. Caleb returned to his workbench near the window, carving wood like it was the only thing that mattered. He didn't speak, didn't intrude, just worked, methodical, steady, present. She watched him for hours. Lunch appeared like magic, a tray with warm bread, a bowl of thick vegetable stew, and peppermint tea that smelled like her childhood. No oat milk latte, no emails, no chaos, just the hiss of the fire and the rhythmic tapping of Caleb's tools. She noticed the wool socks near her feet, thick, soft, hand-woven, a tag in uneven handwriting. Warm and quiet, like good company. Her chest tightened. That night, the tin roof sang with the rain. Isabelle lay awake, her mother's pendant resting on her chest, her mind empty of press releases, schedules, and performance metrics. For the first time in years, she listened, not to voices in a meeting, but to the sound of stillness. And it didn't feel empty. It felt like healing. The next morning, Isabelle awoke to the soft creak of wood and the scent of sawdust wafting through the cabin. Curious, she padded across the worn floorboards, wrapped in a borrowed flannel shirt, and followed the sound to a small open-air shed tucked behind the trees. There she found Caleb. A length of timber lay across 2 sawhorses. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, muscles flexing as he shaved clean curls from the wood. Each movement was slow, deliberate. No wasted energy, no rushing. She stood by the door, arms crossed, watching. "Who's it for?" she asked. He glanced up, smiled faintly. "Mrs. Green. Her rocking chair cracked last winter. Promised her I'd make her a new one before the snow comes." Isabelle tilted her head. "You do this for free?" "Sometimes folks pay," he said, not looking up. "Sometimes they bake pie. Sometimes they just say thanks. Doesn't really matter." She hesitated. "How do you know where to cut?" Caleb paused, ran a hand down the grain. "You listen," he said simply. "The wood tells you." She blinked. For someone like Isabelle, who lived in a world of metrics, margins, and marketing, where every millimeter of design was calculated for profit, His words hit like poetry. That night, they sat at the wooden table, eating vegetable stew from mismatched bowls. The fire glowed behind them, casting golden halos across the rough walls. Isabelle didn't mean to open up, but something about the space, the quiet, the rhythm of it all, loosened her tongue. "My mom used to make jewelry," she said softly, eyes distant. "Not like mine, nothing branded, just quiet, beautiful things. She'd sit at this tiny bench in the back of our shop and shape silver with her hands for hours. She barely spoke, but you could feel the care in everything she touched." Caleb didn't reply. He didn't offer comfort or wisdom or cliché. He just listened. No agenda. No need to fix anything. Just presence. And in that silent moment, Isabelle felt seen, truly seen for the first time in years. Not as a brand, not as a boss, just as someone human again. The morning air was crisp, kissed with dew and pine, as Isabelle stepped out onto the porch. She wrapped her arms around herself, the flannel shirt Caleb had left folded on the stool now hanging loose around her frame. It smelled faintly of cedar and something she couldn't name, something safe. Out in the clearing, Caleb was already kneeling in the soil, gently pulling weeds from rows of mint, rosemary, and kale. He glanced up as she approached, his face calm as always. "Need help?" she asked, surprising even herself. He smiled. "Sure, the mint's taken over again. It's a little territorial." She crouched beside him, fingers sinking into cool dirt. At first, her movements were hesitant, elegant hands unfamiliar with anything not involving glass or gold. But soon the rhythm of it took hold. "I usually lead investor calls at this hour," she murmured, brushing her hair from her face. "Team check-ins, market forecasts, spreadsheets." "And now?" Caleb asked without looking up. She held up a clump of mint, grinning. "Now I'm wrestling herbs." He chuckled. "Careful. Mint always wins." When she reached for another vine, a sharp thorn sliced her fingertip. She gasped, pulling back. Caleb was beside her in seconds. He pulled a folded cloth from his back pocket and wrapped her finger gently. His hands were rough, but his touch wasn't. "There. You're officially a farmer now." She looked up at him, his eyes full of quiet mischief. "You live like this every day?" "I live," he replied, tying the knot snugly. "Do you?" The question hung between them, soft but seismic. Later that afternoon, the scent of sawdust drew her to his workshop. Sunlight poured through the slats in golden beams, catching suspended particles in midair. Caleb stood at the workbench, whittling a small wooden horse. His hands moved with focus and ease, shaping the block as if coaxing it into being. He looked up. "Want to try?" She hesitated. "I've never touched a chisel in my life." "All the better, no bad habits." He handed it to her carefully, along with a fresh block of pine. "Don't force it. Just feel the grain. Let it guide you." She stared at the raw wood in her hands. In her world, every line, every angle had to be perfect, flawless, marketable. But here imperfection had character. She began slowly, uncertainly. Her cuts weren't clean, her grip too tight, but she didn't stop. With each pass, her movements grew steadier, her breathing slower. Caleb stood nearby, not correcting, just watching. Not perfectly, not profitably, just honestly. And in that quiet room filled with the scent of pine and the sound of carving, Isabelle felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Wonder. Not the kind you sell, the kind you remember. The whir of blades broke the stillness of the mountain morning. Isabelle stood on the porch, suitcase in hand, as the rescue helicopter descended into the clearing behind Caleb's cabin. The pines bowed under the gusts. Her heart thudded just as violently. 2 days had passed. 2 days that felt like both an eternity and an instant. She zipped her bag slowly, fingers trembling. The borrowed flannel still clung to her skin, faintly laced with the scent of cedar and firewood. Caleb didn't speak. He just helped her carry the suitcase down the steps, boots crunching against the gravel. The pilot called out above the roar. "We've got 20 minutes. Weather's moving fast." Isabelle nodded, then paused. She reached into her coat pocket. Nothing. Her brows furrowed. She checked the inner lining. The dresser. The bathroom counter. Her chest tightened. "My necklace," she whispered, voice cracking. "My mom's daisy pendant. It's gone." She dropped to her knees in the cabin's doorway, frantically searching the floor, under the bed, behind the nightstand. "I had it when I came." The panic in her voice rose above the chopper's roar. The pilot checked his watch. "We need to go, ma'am. It's now or never." Isabelle froze, tears burning behind her eyes. Caleb knelt beside her. Calm, steady. "I'll find it," he said quietly. "If it's here, I'll send it home." She looked at him, something raw tightening in her throat. Then she nodded, once, and walked away, each step heavier than the last. The helicopter lifted off. The forest grew smaller beneath her. The cabin, the porch, Caleb, standing alone in the clearing, one hand raised, the other clenched tight by his side. He didn't chase her. He didn't call out. And yet it hurt more than any goodbye ever had. Back in the city, skyscrapers pierced the sky, but they felt colder now. Colleagues buzzed, phones rang, contracts awaited, but none of it filled her. Until one quiet morning, her assistant entered with a package. No sender, pine-scented. On the lid, a single word carved in careful letters, Izzy. Inside, her daisy necklace, and tucked beside it, a tiny daisy, carved from wood. Her breath caught, and somewhere deep inside, her heart, long numbed by deadlines and demands, cracked wide open. The boardroom buzzed with tension. Numbers were flying. Spring campaign projections, overseas licensing deals. A $5 million partnership hung in the balance. Isabelle sat at the head of the glass table, staring out at a skyline she no longer saw. Someone across the table raised their voice. "Izzy, we need your call. Now." She blinked, then stood. No speech, no explanation. Just quietly placed her pen on the table and walked out, heels echoing against marble, gasps trailing behind her. 30 minutes later, her Range Rover was speeding east, city towers shrinking in the rearview mirror as winding roads pulled her deeper into pine-covered silence. The signal on her phone dropped. She didn't care. She wasn't running. She was returning. Hours passed in a blur of trees and memory. The sun dipped lower as she recognized the bends in the road, the steep edge where her life had almost ended, and somehow truly begun. When she pulled into the clearing, the cabin stood unchanged. But she wasn't. Caleb stood by a stack of chopped wood, sleeves rolled, axe resting beside him. He looked up as she stepped out of the car, wearing jeans, boots, and a soft cream sweater. Her golden hair was pulled into a loose bun. No makeup, no phone in hand. Just her. He didn't move at first, didn't speak. Then he smiled, not surprised, not dramatic, just deeply glad. "You came back," he said. Isabelle stepped closer, voice quiet but steady. "I left something behind." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Your necklace made it home." She shook her head gently. "Not that." He searched her face and saw it, the softness behind her eyes, the certainty in her steps. She wasn't lost anymore. Without another word, he opened the door and let her inside. The cabin smelled just as she remembered. Pinewood, fire smoke, and something like peace. She looked around slowly, breathing it in. No headlines would cover this. No press releases would spin it. But this moment, this return, was more real than anything she'd ever built. And as the door shut behind her, Isabelle knew. She hadn't just come back. She had finally come home. Life didn't shift all at once. It unfolded like morning light through pine trees. In the weeks after her return, Isabelle and Caleb found a rhythm, quiet and true. They cleared out the old barn beside the cabin. Caleb sanded the beams and reinforced the frame, while Isabelle painted the windows white and drew plans on recycled parchment. What began as a simple idea, a place to carve, grew into something bigger. They called it Still Root, a woodworking studio for kids. Isabelle handled the design, gentle curves, safe tools, open shelves filled with paints and sandpaper. Caleb did the building, benches sized for small hands, stools carved from logs, a sign over the doorway with a single phrase burned into the grain, "Where real things begin." Word spread quickly through the valley. At first, the children came shyly. Some walked the trail alone, Others held tight to a parent's hand. Most had never used a chisel or held a brush. Some had never made anything of their own before. But Isabelle met them at the door, kneeling to their level, smiling without the sharp polish of her city days. She guided their fingers with patience. She didn't correct their crooked edges or messy paint. She praised the attempt. And slowly they bloomed. Laughter echoed through the barn. Sawdust settled like snow on their cheeks. The walls filled with wooden animals, clumsy hearts, and names etched in shaky lettering. One morning, as Isabelle refilled a bowl of crayons, a little girl tugged at her apron. "Who's that man with the beard?" the girl asked, pointing to the workbench. Isabelle turned. Caleb stood in the sunlight, helping a boy sand a wooden plane. His flannel sleeves were rolled to the elbows, sawdust in his hair, eyes soft with focus. Isabelle smiled. "That's Caleb," she said quietly, more to herself than the girl. "He saw me when I forgot myself." The child blinked, then nodded solemnly, as if understanding something far too big for her age. Outside, the wind rustled through the tall pines, carrying laughter and the scent of cedar. Inside Stillroot, something far more lasting was being carved. Not just toys, but peace, confidence, belonging. And Isabelle, for the first time, wasn't building for approval. She was building home. The sun hung low on a warm July evening, casting everything in golden light. The trees swayed in rhythm with the wind, their leaves whispering promises of something quiet and extraordinary. Caleb had disappeared into the woods earlier that afternoon, saying nothing more than, "I've got a little something to finish." Isabelle hadn't questioned it. Life with him had taught her to leave space for silence, for patience, for things that didn't need explaining. She sat barefoot on the cabin porch, sipping wild mint tea, her sketchbook in her lap, flipping through pages of childlike figurines, toy ideas, little dreams carved from soft pencil and softer hope. The sky dimmed. And then he returned. No grand entrance, no spotlight, just Caleb, walking up the dirt path with something tucked behind his back and sawdust still clinging to his sleeves. He stopped in front of her, clearing his throat gently. "I don't have a speech," he said. "Good," Isabelle smiled. "I'd interrupt it." He chuckled, then knelt before her, drawing from behind him a small box. It was hand-carved pine wood, smooth and imperfect, with a tiny daisy etched into the lid. Her breath caught. He opened it slowly. Inside was a silver ring, simple but stunning, and on its slender band, a single daisy carved in soft relief, the same flower her mother wore, the same pendant she thought she'd lost forever. Caleb looked up, eyes steady. "Will you be my wood?" he asked, voice quiet, a little unsteady. "Not perfect, not polished, just something I can shape a life with." Isabelle laughed, half joy, half disbelief. Then the tears came, unexpected and full. And then she said yes. They didn't wait months for a venue or vendors. The clearing behind the workshop became their chapel. The children helped weave garlands of wildflowers. Neighbors brought baskets of bread, jars of jam, and folded quilts for seats. There were no chandeliers, just pine trees, sunshine, and the scent of rosemary on the wind. Isabelle walked barefoot through the tall grass, wearing a soft white dress and a daisy tucked behind one ear. Caleb met her beneath a hand-built arbor draped in ivy. Their vows were whispered, not projected. Promises spoken not for photos but for each other. A little boy clapped too early. A girl tossed wildflower petals like confetti. And Isabelle didn't care about timing or image or angles. She just looked at Caleb and knew. This was the life she'd never dared to imagine. They sealed it with laughter, with hands held tight, with rings carved not for display, but for meaning. And that night, under a sky bursting with stars, they danced without music. Because some stories don't need sound to be unforgettable, they just need truth. Isabelle never gave another interview, not to fashion magazines, not to morning shows, not even when the gossip blogs speculated wildly about the woman who vanished and came back different. She didn't need to explain. The truth wasn't made for headlines. Her mornings were no longer dictated by alarms or back-to-back calls. Now she woke to the crow of roosters and the sizzle of butter on cast iron. She didn't read news first. She watered her herbs. Basil, thyme, rosemary, each leaf like a small, quiet victory. She chopped vegetables by instinct, not recipe. She walked barefoot more often than not. Caleb taught her the deeper rhythm of wood, how to know its age by scent, how to sand without stripping its story, how to fix a crack without hiding it. She taught children how to shape, to imagine, to make beauty from mistakes. Together they built benches, birdhouses, balance. And laughter came easily now. It echoed through the walls of Stillroot and spilled out onto the trails, carried by wind and wonder. Children with sawdust in their hair shouted her name. Not Miss Langford, just Miss Izzy. They lived slowly but fully. Sometimes at night, Isabelle would sit beside Caleb on the porch, wrapped in a soft blanket, tea cupped in both hands. They wouldn't talk much. The trees whispered enough. Above them, the stars blinked without needing to be seen. And in those still moments when the world was soft and honest, Isabelle would lean her head on his shoulder and whisper, "We're real." Caleb would smile, press a kiss to her temple, and say with the quiet certainty of someone who had nothing to prove. Always. Because some stories don't need applause. Some love doesn't need validation. Some lives are carved not in stone, but in wood, slowly, patiently, imperfectly. And those are the ones that last. Sometimes we don't realize how fast we're moving until something forces us to stop. Isabelle Langford had everything: wealth, power, recognition. But it wasn't until she lost control on a winding mountain road that she discovered what she'd truly been missing: presence, purpose, and a place to just be. In today's fast-paced American culture, where success is often measured in emails answered and calendars filled to the brim, this story reminds us that stillness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That real connection doesn't come from screens, but from eye contact, from handmade gifts, from shared silence. Whether you're retired and rediscovering your days or younger and wondering if the rat race is really worth it, ask yourself, what would it look like to live slower? To build something with your hands? To fall in love with enough? We'd love to hear from you. Have you ever walked away from a life that looked perfect to find something real? Do you believe love like Isabelle and Caleb's still exists in the modern world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone. And if this story stirred something inside you, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Warm Soul Stories and join our growing family of listeners who believe in kindness, courage, and the beauty of a life carved slowly. Because in the end, it's not about having more. It's about holding on to what matters and never letting it go. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, stay warm, stay kind, and stay rooted.